Hello, and welcome to this very special bonus episode of Dear Rach and Soph. I'll tell you what we're talking about in a moment, but before I do, hi Soph, by the way.
Rach, great to see you. I have missed you so much.
Same, I know. This is very exciting. That's why we've had a big chat already before we even recorded. But we just wanted both to say thank you so much to everyone who listened to our season 1 of Dear Rach and Soph. And I think you've had messages, I've had messages. We've been posted on social media, and that just makes us so happy that there's people
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah,
And
people saying they were hoping we'll come back soon. So here we are, sooner than we.
Soph, are we coming back soon, Sophie? This is a special episode to talk about your very new book, The Art Hour at the Duchess Hotel, which by the time we release this will have been out a few weeks. But are we coming back soon?
Look, I think we are, Rach. We've had
Yay!
planning. Zoom links have been sent. We've had subject discussions. So there's a whole lot going on. Yes, we are coming back for season 2.
We are. And so because this is a bonus episode, if you, just a reminder also, if you have any particular subjects that you want us to talk about, we are flexible. And so although we've got some things planned, we are happy to mix things up and discuss other things. So if you want us to talk about a particular publishing or writing or reading issue, then message one of us or email in the show notes.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a question, because that's like what Dear H and Soph originally started as, right?
Yeah. And now I think it's just a catch-all title, which hopefully conveys the warmth of our conversations.
Yeah. But if you do have a question, we would love to try and answer it. As long as it's not like a maths question or something.
Although I
Like
quite like those.
well, I can't do them anymore. All right, if you have a maths question, Soph will try and answer them for you. But what
Tip
if
one of
you
algebra.
what is that? Oh, excellent. I do not understand when letters come into maths. I think maths should only be about numbers. And very small ones, particularly. Yeah. But we saw each other almost a month ago now. I think it's almost like a month today, almost. At my cousin Lizzie Dent's launch of her latest book, Just One Wish, in Sydney, where I had quite a few drinks with not much food. So I think it was an amusing event.
It was very, very fun and lots of great feeling in the room. And you had family members there because they're also Lizzie's family members. So that was really lovely.
Yeah, so that was good. We didn't get to chat for too long, but it was always nice to see you in person,
Yeah.
briefly. So since then, as you said, we haven't chatted as frequently. We've had messages, going back and forth. But tell me and our lovely listeners, what have you been up to in the last month?
I have been writing next year's novel, and I've also been gearing up for the launch of Art Hour at the Duchess Hotel. So doing some interviews, getting my head around like all the social media stuff to
Yeah.
do. Actually, I think I'm lying. I don't think I need to get my head around it. I think that was just like a default statement. I've got to get my head around it. I think I'm in the run of things now with social media. But yes, so doing that at the same time as writing next year's book and doing my job and that sort of thing. And also doing quite a lot of country music interviews, possibly too many.
Okay.
But anyway, that's my little thing to sort out.
I
How
was
have
going
you
to
been up
say,
to?
before that, I was going to say, I think you are pretty good at social media. You're on there all the time, and you're doing very well in the TikToks, which I only go and look at it once in a blue moon at the moment. I've been very slack on socials lately. I always feel like I should do a reintroduction post on TikTok because, yeah, just
I don't
disappeared.
think you need to, because the nature of TikTok is that often they'll put older
Yeah,
videos
people won't even
in
know,
your
kind of.
feed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And something else you said there. Oh, I want to know, what's your word count so far for your next?
Oh, what was it? I think I'm
Do
up
you
to
know
20, I
that? You
think I'm
like
up to
what?
26,000. I
Wow. You don't really
don't
watch?
tend to, no, because I don't count words per time.
And
So
you're a bit like you just know it'll be done in a certain
yeah,
amount of time. You just trust the process kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm having fun with it.
that's great. That's the most important. Well, that's wonderful. It doesn't happen all the time with writing, I feel like, but some books are, more of a joy to write than others. And I think if you are having fun, then that is very, very good sign, and it makes it just better in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, it's good fun. There's lots of random secondary characters popping up because it's set in a hairdressing salon.
Yeah,
And
it's such a great setting.
come with a
My
client.
hairdresser has been always saying to me for years, and other ones that I've been to, you should write a book set in a hairdresser. So there you go. I'll say, well, I haven't, but here's one my friend wrote.
Hopefully it's true to life. God knows I've spent enough time in salons that I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
picked up some stuff. Yeah.
Most of us have. Yeah, what have I been doing? Oh, golly, I feel like I've been away. I think I've been away only once since I saw you, but I went up north to a cattle station called Ballara, which for a research trip for some books that hopefully will be coming in the next few years. And that was
That sounds intriguing. That sounds like a new series, maybe.
yeah, I'm pitching to my publisher and they seem pretty keen, but red dirt rom-coms. So kind of combination of my rural and my rom-coms rather than your straight sort of rural that I've been writing before.
Yeah.
So
Red
yeah,
Dirt rom-com sounds like a great genre.
yes, that's what we're hoping. And so I did that, which was great. I'm the events manager I've probably mentioned before for Romance Writers Australia and our conference. I think by the time we release this, the conference will be actually happening, maybe. And so that's been very busy because the lead up to that. I've also been doing structural edits for The Bad Bridesmaid, which is coming out in January, and they just submitted those. And now I'll be waiting, having a bit of a break before copy edits. But I'm kind of thinking about the book that I'm writing next, which is a women's fiction. And I think we're going to talk a bit about one of the topics that in it. I mean, this is a small topic in my book that I'm writing, adoption. It's not like it's not really the topic of the book, but the adoption leads to sort of, because my two main characters are adopted, it kind of leads to what happens to them in the book. So you and I are going to chat a little bit about adoption because you're adopted.
Yes.
And so I'm going to pick your brain on a Zoom for everyone to listen to in a couple of weeks as well. That might be one of our first episodes, unless we give too much away.
Yeah, and that will be for you to decide because it's your book. And
then we might hold it over till once the book comes out.
That's right. So we'll see what comes out, and then Rach will arbitrate on that. And if it's going to reveal too much, then yes, it will be held over till next year sometime.
Speaking of books, congratulations. That the art hour, it's just art hour. I keep wanting to call it the art hour, but it's just art hour.
Whatever you want, Rachel.
Okay. Well, no, I'd like to call it by the proper title. I do love it though, Howard. And I thought this is maybe because I've got the advanced reading copy here. For anyone who's watching us on YouTube, I'm holding up the book for people who are just listening on the podcast. And I thought that maybe join us, because it says at the top, join us for Art Hour at Duchess Hotel. And I thought maybe that was part of the advanced reading copy only. You know how sometimes they're different. But
yes.
I have seen, I'm pretty sure that it is part of the final copy as well. And I love that. Yeah. So it's really, and I've just actually seen, I know I wasn't going to talk about covers, but your covers are particularly beautiful. Very much, you've been branded really well since your very first book, the inaugural meeting of the Fairvale Ladies Book Club or literary. Anyway,
book club. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And then what number is this?
That's number 6.
Wow. So number 6, and they've all been beautifully branded covers. And so you can very much tell that it's one of your books. But I just noticed here, because obviously art hour, art involved. That's not a spoiler. I'll try not to do spoilers because, we don't want to give away anything, but I do want to pick your brain on how you write the books and all that kind of stuff. I love it. There's 2 little pens, or pencil and a paintbrush, and I had not realized that before. So there's all those little details in the cover, which are beautiful. Yeah. So do you wanna, because you're the person that's going to be best to, I finished it yesterday, and I could tell everyone what it's about, but it's probably better if you practice your pitch and let us know what it's about, and then we'll go into some details.
Okay. So it's about 4 women who are all somehow tied into the Duchess Hotel, which is a fictional hotel based on a real building near Portsea on the Mornington Peninsula. The real building is Delgado, which used to be a hotel and is now private residences. But the story idea came to me in a different hotel in Melbourne a few years ago. And there was a woman living in that hotel who had been there for several months. And she told me that she was just figuring a few things out. And that was intriguing. And I thought, wow, what would you do what would happen in your life that would mean you'd come to a hotel and just stay here for a few months?
You must have pretty good money to be able to do that.
Yeah. And she looked to be of an age where she might have grown-up children. And so I thought, okay, this is interesting. And she was wearing wedding rings. That was another interesting part of it. So I thought, okay. So I got to thinking and made some notes pretty quickly after that, and just knew the character was called Joan. So Joan is the first character we meet in the novel. And whoever is the first character who comes to me for the story, that's who gets the first chapter. So we have Joan, and then we have Frances, who lives near the hotel and goes there pretty much every day just because she wants some company.
I love that.
Yeah, she doesn't usually pay for anything there, because Shane, the bartender, who's a secondary character but very important throughout, he takes care of her in the bar.
Yeah,
And we
that's
have Alison, who is Frances's daughter, and Kiralee, who works at the hotel as well. And they're all at different phases of needing things from their lives and feeling a bit disconnected from who they were. So Joan used to be a painter, and then she had a tragedy in her life and she stopped painting, and it's been a very long time since she's done it. And she, in the opening chapter, this is not really a spoiler, the opening chapter, she leaves her
love the first
home.
chapter. It's a great first chapter. Very, you know, you could get straight into the story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I think you probably feel this as well. You want your readers to feel engaged straight away. You don't want to waste their time. I know you and I are both quite conscious of readers and their time, and you want to make it worth their while. And so I want that first chapter to do a lot of work. It has to set the scene, has to draw the reader in, and hopefully establish at least some of the themes that are going to be in
yeah, it definitely did. Yeah.
So Joan leaves her home in Sydney and heads to the Mornington Peninsula, where she was happy as a child.
I love that.
On holidays, and then we take it from there.
And I'm just curious, I've got some other questions about particularly the characters, but when you said, you know, Joan came to you first, so she's the person that gets the first chapter, and that is a very dramatic sort of first chapter. I love that, and this is not a spoiler, but because it happens, you said in the first chapter, you can read the first chapter, probably you can get download a sample, you know.
That's right. Yeah.
So, you know, I don't feel like we're I love that her husband, and I think so many women, whether married or in a relationship or not, feel this, because you've always, women, like, we just got people who are always kind of wanting something from us, right? Is it at work? Is it parents? Is it children? Is it friends? You know, like, and I just felt so much like I understand why she just came to the end of her tether, because her husband just comes home and says, we're having a dinner party and you've got to cook dinner or whatever for 7 people or something. And it's just like, if my husband did that, I would, well, he wouldn't, because he doesn't like people really, but if he did, I would just be like, no, for a start. But I totally understand the era, and then why, you know, she's just been doing it, and then she snaps. So you said you started with her point of view because she came to you first.
Yeah.
Did the scene come to you with her? Or did you, like, what do you mean she came to you first? What was about her?
It was based on that woman I'd met in Melbourne, and I just knew her name was Joan, and some of the character details in terms of her personality are from that original conception of her. The details of her life are different. But I knew she had that kind of husband. I knew she had this sort of life. I just didn't know where I was going to put it. And then once I knew that art was going to be the linking device for these women, I thought about where to set it. Now, I live in a part of Sydney which is quite near somewhere called Curlew Camp, which was an artist camp in the late 19th century, where Arthur Street and Tom Roberts and some other Australian Impressionist painters lived there in tents. And
check out your Sophie's Insta or TikToks if you want to see some pictures and videos from that.
Yeah, thanks for the plug, Rach, the socials. So I just thought, and I had a story idea from quite a few years ago around Fairvale time that involved Curlew Camp, and it was a parallel storyline of that time, of late 19th century and then contemporary, and it was to do with a woman who was painter.
Wow.
And so I'd had that idea sitting in my brain for quite a long time.
And you had the art sitting in your brain, obviously, as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, all right. So when I was thinking about what I would do with Joan, I remembered the Curlew Camp idea. I was like, oh, so maybe that's where she lives, looking over Sirius Cove, which is where Curlew Camp is, and this idea for her that there's a place there that she could have connected to through her art, but she hasn't done it. And what does that mean? And why hasn't she? And that just prompts a bit of soul searching. So yeah, I did know who she was pretty much from the get-go. It's just that sometimes they take a while to become clear.
Yeah. I just had a thought then, because there's a couple of things I wanted to say, but what was I sorry everyone, I've had a mind blank, but I'm just trying to remember. It was very important. No, linking, because we've talked about I think on the podcast that all of your books that in this genre so far that you've written under Sophie Green have had a linking device. So the first one was books, book club. You've had swimming, you've had gardening, you've had a choir. I'm missing one. Yoga. I'm not that bad. And then we've got art. But in some ways, I just thought it's almost, I feel like art is a secondary linking thing here. And it's the hotel that's the linking thing.
The hotel is the linking place, yes. And
Yeah,
there was a conversation with publishers about this because
yeah.
I was in favor of just having the hotel as the linking device.
They just
And
call it the Duchess Hotel type thing.
it was
Or
going to actually, this, I haven't said this anywhere else. It was going to be called High Tea at the Duchess Hotel.
oh, I like.
But I did take their point, which was the high tea in and of itself, because it had been high tea at the Duchess Hotel in my mind for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I couldn't do much with that from a story point of view. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, and as soon as that was said to me,
Just all sit around eating cakes.
right, it's like, what's going on here? And I thought, no, I can't actually do much with that.
Oh.
So I have to come up with something else.
Was that before you came up with the art? Like it was just they all meet kind of interesting.
So that was it. But see, this story idea has been around for a really long time. And I actually tried.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I tried a different version of this, got to about 20,000 words, and it was very dark. So Genevieve, who is a secondary character in this version and is Joan's best friend from Sydney, was a major character. And in that original version, Joan and Genevieve were best friends and their daughters were best friends. And we opened after the death of Joan's daughter in a car that Genevieve's daughter was driving.
Oh,
That was going to be the thing that prompted Joan to leave and leave her life, and she was going to run away to the hotel. And I Frances was in that, so was Kiralee, and so was Shane, I think. So it was, this character setup was almost the same, but it was a very different story. And I wrote it pre-pandemic, and then I kept thinking, what will I do with it? Is it going to be anything? And then once we hit the pandemic and everything went dark, I just knew
something lighter.
it wasn't the time. And then I realized it was never going to be the time. But the publishers did see it, and I sent it in saying, look, I'm sending this to you because I have it, and I think the setup of the hotel works, but I do think this is too dark. Let me know what you think. And we had actually 2 separate years we looked at it and thought about it, and then decided, yes, finally, it was just not going to work in its.
You only wrote, did you say you wrote about 20,000 words of that book or whatever? Interesting.
And
I do like that conflict.
Sorry?
I do like that conflict of, like, 2 best friends and then one of their daughters sort of being involved in a car accident that kills the other. Like that's as you say, very dark, but also a lot.
It was very dark. And then also I would have had to tunnel my way back towards the light, I think, whereas I just don't think people need it still. I think that part of our job as novelists is to give people some entertainment, and also
particularly in the type of books that we write.
Yeah. So I totally accepted that. And that, for anyone who's listening who is a writer who's thinking, oh, throwing out all those words, I have thrown out hundreds of thousands of words in the course of writing these books, and I don't regret any of them.
Same. Yep, same. I think sometimes you've got to write to find out what doesn't work. Like I've talked about that before with my book Outback Secrets. Okay, so I've talked to you before about your the way you write, and I know you use Francesca Leah Block's 12 questions before you do anything else, right? So you come up with an idea, so say the linking thing in this one or in the hotel. Oh, I was going to say before that, I just want to say how much I love hotel books. So because I think you said something about the hotel was going to be the high tea kind of the hotel. Like, I would have read that because I like anything to do with hotels. So thank you for writing a hotel book.
Very welcome.
It isn't. I think a hotel is a good sort of device because there's a lot of different angles, but like often it's derelict or run down, or they're trying to save it. But there's also like so many different people. There's the staff, then there's the people that come and go. Sometimes I've read books with ghosts in the hotel because it's history and so there's so much to do. So I really love hotel books. So thank you for writing one. But yes, let's get to the characters, because I read this book. I've got some notes here. When I started reading, as I said, the first chapter, I was just like, hooked in. But the first thing I really noticed, I wrote here, there's such a strong backstory of each of the characters. And a lot of that actually happens quite, we get to know who they are
Mhm.
in the first, each of their first chapters. You get quite a lot of their backstory. So I've got two kind of questions. Well, one, I found that really, like, as I said, you knew so much about them, which I'm in awe of. So I want to talk about how you came up with those backstories and if it was to do it. But also, interestingly enough, like often I think we're told, um, seed your backstory and don't like put loads, in up front. But I really enjoyed, I feel like there was quite a lot. And I
Mhm.
really enjoyed that because I felt like straight away I really knew who these characters were.
Mhm.
And I felt like you knew who they were.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what do you feel about backstory? Let's start with that. Like, do you think about backstory? Um, and yeah, like, how did you know about all the backstory first? And
It's
how,
when I do that planning document, the 12
yeah.
questions, I don't only answer the questions, I also make other notes. So
Okay, yeah.
I will,
Can you tell us some of the questions?
sure, I will put on my glasses because I'll need to find the document, Rach, while we're talking.
Okay,
People who are
well,
listening and not watching, this is going to be slightly boring for you as I attempt to make light conversation and fill in. I'm going to open the one for the novel I'm working on right now. So the first one is, what is your character's gift?
Mhm.
The second one is, what is your character's flaw? The third one is, what does your character want? And the fourth one is, what does your character need? And
Yep.
then it goes on from there. And then some of the others are about the setup for the whole story. And I won't give all the
No,
questions because it's
obviously it's someone else's work and they're, yeah.
so I think
But
what does the difference between want and need is really important, and it's not
yeah,
something that's necessarily talked about a lot in life and also in characters, which is that we often think about desires, things we're yearning for, but part of our job as writers is to give people what they need, not what they
yeah,
want.
yeah, yep, yeah.
And
That's really
it's the
good.
same for writers of television or film. I think it's the same for songwriters. And I've actually just the time we're recording last night, I interviewed Luke O'Shea, who's won 16 Golden Guitars. He's one of my favorite
Oh,
songwriters and performers. And he
yeah.
pretty much was saying that too. Is like, you've got to give people what they need.
Mm.
And he's a high school teacher as well.
Oh,
So he's
wow.
quite used to thinking about that. And he writes, for anyone who's listening and hasn't heard of Luke's work, he writes stories in songs. Like you get beginning, middle, and end, the whole song, and you also get it in each verse. So you get often a
What's
line.
his name again? Luke O'Shea.
Luke O'Shea, he's about to release his new album, Different Drum, on digital. He had put it out in CD last year, and so it's about to be out in digital. So if anyone's listening to it, South Beach Strip is the first song to go to um, for that experience. He's just so good at it. And
Definitely gonna have a check him out. Yeah.
a little sidebar, but it's that idea of we have to deliver what the characters want, but also what they need. And so when I'm thinking about who these people are, it's not enough to think, well, what are they telling me? Well, because as you know, Rachel, characters talk to us.
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
they telling me they want? It's actually, what do they need? And sometimes I have to make what I think an unpopular choice in the character's mind for what's going to happen to them,
Yeah.
because they, in the way their storylines resolve, is often to do with what they need, not what they want.
Yeah.
So I often will make those notes contemporaneously with doing the 12 questions. Sometimes I'll start the page and I'll actually just start making the notes and then think, okay, I better answer these questions.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
more likely what happens is I answer the questions and then I start making other notes. And so I
Yeah.
start thinking, who are they? What do they want? What do they need? All those sorts of things. And it can become quite a fleshed out life on that page. And so
Yeah.
I do get to know them really well. And then I do other planning documents around them and what they need. And in terms of the amount of detail I deliver early on, I think I live by the rule that I need to deliver what the reader needs,
At
not a
that
word less,
particular
not a
time.
word at that particular time. And
Yeah.
so uh, I always think getting it out early means that you get the readers really familiar with those characters and they
Well,
know.
that's what I was really thinking, yeah, when I was reading. And I think sometimes newer writers probably, because I mean, we're so told, don't info dump, don't put so much backstory, that almost you don't give enough. And so that can stop people actually connecting with your characters.
Yeah.
And to be able to, to want to continue reading, you have to be invested in the characters, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really good. Did you do you answer all of the questions? Do you ever?
Well,
Yeah,
not for every character, because some of them are related to the story as a whole. And Francesca often writes just single point of view. So
yep,
for
yep.
her, that makes more sense. I should also say, with the information that gets delivered, everything I will tell a reader about a character early on is relevant to the story as a whole. So that's also where that rule about delivering the information that's needed at the time it's needed is I'm not telling you anything that you don't need to know for
Yeah,
later on.
yeah.
There's plenty I know about those characters that's never in the books.
That's interesting. You've written that already down, but you don't, it just doesn't get on the thing.
Plenty. Like, I will go back to those character profiles halfway through a manuscript to go, oh yeah, I
Oh, do
forgot
you?
about her. So
Oh, that's so interesting. And do you have a feeling when you're ready to start? Like, how do you know when you've done enough character work?
I feel the high tide mark rising, or like a wave, almost a wave rising.
Yeah.
It's a bodily feeling, and and if you're watching the video, I'm pointing to my chest as I'm saying this, because it is this feeling that it's up around my chest, and I'm like,
Can't wait any longer almost.
yeah, got to get it out now. And so then I will sit down and write the first chapter.
Yep. And I was gonna say, like, I felt like because I know you, so I know you now, and I knew who you were before, but this is the first book I've read since I feel like I know you better. We've had a lot of conversations and stuff, and it was interesting because as I was reading it, I was thinking of you more than like, well, I've read your books before, and I wasn't particularly thinking of a person, like I wasn't thinking of the writer.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was thinking of you, and I know that we've talked before that hopefully I'm making it up now about plotting and pantsing type
Mhm.
thing and how much you know beforehand. And you said, I think you said you just do that, the Francesca Leiblock kind of questions, and you have a vague idea about
Mhm.
what's going on. Because some things that happened in there, and I won't probably mention them because we don't want to give spoilers. I was like, oh, did you know that from the start? Like, when certain characters turned up, midway, different ones, or yeah. So how much do you know of a book before you start? And
I don't know the plot details. I know the emotional arc for each character, and I will plot 10 to 15 chapters ahead, but
that's right. You said that, yeah.
it always changes. So, and that's part of the fun, because I just think, all
Do
right, I'm
you?
just going to start this experience and see what happens.
I'm just looking up. So there's 69 chapters in this book. I was just checking. So do you and I've got some other books over there, but haven't checked. Do you have a particular amount of character, chapters that you are working towards when you say you plot 15 ahead? Do you just
No, I
feel?
kind of know now that the word count I need to get to will put the chapters in the 60s,
Yeah. Okay.
usually.
Interesting. Because
Um,
do you usually write the same sort of length chapters?
Pretty much. And I take it as a rhythmic thing. It's like, if rhythmically this chapter feels like it's coming to an end, like I can feel the final beat there,
Yeah.
then I'll end it. I don't want to artificially inflate it.
Yeah.
And some chapters are longer than others, particularly at the start of a book when I'm doing all that work to establish the characters. Those chapters will be longer. But then as we get into chapters where there's more dialogue, they'll often be shorter because the dialogue is snappier on the page and you just don't need much else going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Mm.
yeah, it really depends. And again, I trust that rhythmic part of it. And I think with each book, the scalpel should get sharper,
Yeah.
and I should be better able to
That's what I
do.
hope too with mine. And I would just say, so yeah, 4 point of views in this book. Actually, I wrote this question when like obviously halfway through, and then I can answer it probably myself. But I was saying, like, there was a couple of characters that came in like were quite well formed, like Wendy.
Hmm.
And she was actually someone who comes into the hotel a lot and does join the art hour.
Hmm.
And then we had Shane as well, who's in every chapter almost and joins the art hour and has stuff going on in his life that we get to know a little bit about. So obviously, so Joan came to you first, but how do you choose the 4 point of views that you're going to do, and how do you choose not to have the other people that are kind of bigger characters? If it makes sense. Yeah.
So Frances was with me in the very first draft of the inaugural meeting of the Fairvale Ladies Book Club.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We need to talk about that.
She did not make it to the end, but
Why?
I was trying to do too much. I
Okay.
already had 5 main characters in that book, and I thought I needed this older woman who grew up on a property, and and I've sort of wedged in this storyline, and I really liked her as a character. And my best friend Jen read the manuscript, that very first manuscript, and she over the years has talked about Frances. Like, where is
Oh
Frances?
wow.
Like, I really like her. So like Frances, I had in mind for something. I just wasn't sure what it would be. And when I started writing that darker version of Duchess Hotel, I thought,
Yeah.
I think she belongs here. So I'm going to put her in. And then Shane was a character who I tried to put into two different storylines for other novels, and they just
bartender in both.
he wasn't actually. He was, but I knew he was a Vietnam veteran,
Yep.
and he just kept following me around, and he really was following me around for so long. I kept thinking, I've got to find somewhere for him. I don't know what it is. And then when I started writing Duchess, maybe he wasn't in the dark version.
Yeah.
I can't remember now. But whenever I started writing this version, he was there, and I just knew I had to put him in that hotel, and I knew he and Frances belonged together. I remember thinking, oh, you two have been hanging around me for so long because you belong together. That's what it is. Like, it's so they're friends in Duchess Hotel. And so I originally had, so in that darker version of it, as I said, Genevieve was the main character. So there were 4 points of view in that. It was Joan, Frances, Genevieve, and Kiralee. When I came to do this version of it, Genevieve had to go because she had to remain behind in Sydney.
Yeah.
And that was always the plan, but with the change in structure to do with the art class, there was no place for her anymore. But I did still want her to be around a bit. And then I actually got about halfway into writing this version with Frances, Joan, and Kiralee as the points of view. And I was thinking something feels off about just, and then I realized I'd originally had 4 points of view, and that's what it felt like it needed. So Alison, who is Frances's daughter, was already pushing through quite strongly in all of her material.
So you didn't write the 12 questions for her, I'm guessing?
I did, yeah. So as soon as I knew that, I was like,
do that way at the beginning.
yeah, I didn't, because I didn't think she'd be a point. But this has happened to me before. In Bellbird River, I had 4, and then Victoria's cousin Gabrielle absolutely bossed her way into having a point of view. So there were 5. Like, she just wouldn't. Every time I went to write a chapter with her, I was like, she's completely taking over.
Yeah.
I think I have to give in. So
well, that's what I love about writing books and stuff. When you know, I mean, I think all writers probably don't know everything going in, but not knowing a whole lot of things and just letting the characters take form and, you know, take direction. Some become bigger than others is what is magical.
Yeah.
So what I was also very interested in, we talked about, I think it's our second podcast or our third, about us both being the child of an affair. And a lot of books do include affairs, like, I guess because they're a secret often.
Yeah.
And a betrayal.
Yeah.
You know, and so they're two big things that work well in fiction, right? But like, I'm wondering what I don't even know how to phrase the question, like, what made you decide to choose to have an affair in this particular book, and has it got anything to do with your own situation?
Without giving too much away in terms of the storyline.
Oh, yeah, true. I shouldn't do that, should I? Silly me. You don't know who has an affair.
No, it wasn't to do with my situation. It was more that, I think it's what you said, like, they work in fiction because secrets and lies are often the engine of fiction.
Definitely.
And
there's only so many when you think about it, really.
Yeah, but it also had to feel true to the character, and I just felt that this particular character, it was the sort of thing where it just made sense that there was some fracturing of her sense of herself, and
very realistic.
Yeah, someone else can walk into that, and if you're dealing with someone who is looking for a chance, then they can usually sense when someone's vulnerable like that, and they walk into it.
Yeah, I do feel like she was very vulnerable, and it's not something she would have, like, looked for herself. Anyway, we better not give too many spoilers away. So let's so there's also a lot about gender roles in this book and women losing themselves in marriage. And I just want to know, like, did you think, I'm going to write a book about a hotel and art and, you know, women losing themselves to marriage? Because I think all 4 of the women are married or have been married, and have, you know, and yeah, that's a big theme in the book, basically. And did you decide, like, when did that come? Because I know people, like, I've read books, craft books and stuff, where they, like, if you know the thing, like, you need to know the theme of your book before you start.
Mhm.
And then other ones that say, you know, don't worry about that because these things kind of develop as they come along. So, what's your thoughts on theme and where they sit in your fiction? Or
This
where,
thing definitely just developed through the writing because the whole thing about marriage started with Joan and that woman I met in the hotel, and the fact that she was wearing wedding rings, and then she was obviously taking a few months out from her life to sort things out. So I just thought, okay, well, that's there's something there. So that set me off thinking about that particular line of that woman losing herself in marriage. Well, Joan, I don't know anything about the woman in the hotel. I was
yeah.
But see, I actually didn't realize that all four of the characters were married until a certain way. And because I've always thought of Frances as simply mourning a lost, well, not simply, she's mourning a lost love who was not her husband.
Yeah.
So for me, that was her story.
Yeah,
And
true. Actually, when you think about it, I mean, she did then get married to someone else, didn't she? So,
which is what she had to do for the time. She
yeah,
was
exactly.
growing up because so
So it's
she
not just about losing yourself in marriage, it's about what is expected of a woman.
it's about societal expectations and how and if I look at the art as a device and painting and Joan wanting to reclaim that for herself and the fact that creativity so often is sacrificed on the altar of duty for women in particular
Yeah.
because of what they're socialized, what little girls are told they need to be doing, what teenage girls, what young women are told they need to be doing in their lives. And it's not seen as valid to
Yeah.
devote yourself to a creative practice when you could be in the service of others. And it would be much more convenient if you were. This is
So
not at
true.
all to denigrate women who make household and life
Oh, no,
a creative
definitely not.
focus.
Yeah.
Alice Walker wrote a book many years ago. The African American writer Alice Walker wrote a book many years ago, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, which was about the role of craft in women's lives and how that's their art. And craft is often denigrated. It's seen
Yeah.
less than baking, gardening, quilting, things like that. It's
Yeah.
like it's just craft. That's actually women's art.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really
So
important. And
true.
so a lot of women do find their creativity and their art through household and life. And that's therefore their canvas. It's just in Joan's
Yeah.
case, she had a different canvas in mind.
Yeah. No, I think it was great that all those themes there and resonate with so many of the readers, I think. As will the fantasy of escaping your life sometimes.
Well, and I think you say you like hotel novels. I think partly because hotels are so alluring, right? That whole idea
Yeah.
that you can go to this place where someone's going to cook and clean for you.
Yes.
You just
You can
walk
order
out and leave
food
it. It's
and someone will, yeah, no. Yeah. I love being in a hotel by
Yeah.
myself. So
Right. So then
yeah.
here we look at the nature of what fantasy is, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for many people, staying in a hotel, it's a fantasy, and therefore a hotel story is a
Yeah.
fantasy story. It's like, oh, I can remember years ago because I loved the TV series The West Wing, reading that The West Wing was a fantasy. And I remember thinking, oh, what a strange thing to say. But then I realized what they meant, and in fact, it was explained
Yeah.
was the fantasy of having a president like President Bartlett. And it was the fantasy that there were these sorts of people working in the White House. And I was
Yeah.
like, for a show that seems so rooted in reality, yeah, it was a fantasy. And I think hotel
That's so
novels
true.
can
I
be the
mean,
same
I
thing.
guess in that way, like most books are a fantasy, aren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and TV shows and movies. Yeah, very interesting.
And we need it.
Yeah, exactly. Now you don't write contemporary novels exactly, although this one, because I think a historical novel is supposed to be 50 years old
Mm.
or more. Is that right? Have you?
I think there's a
Yeah.
classification on Bookscan that gives
Yeah,
the
that's
gives the
oh
date range. Yeah.
yeah,
I
I've
don't
heard
know what it
50
is.
years. So it's funny because this would then take, so this is set in 1999, I think. I
Mm.
love, and what I always love about books like this that are set in the near past is that I recognize things that people are talking about. So one particular example is the Sydney Olympics.
Yeah.
When they're talking about it coming and will they go to the Olympics or and just different things like that because it's still in my lifetime. So
Yeah.
I remember these things. So I really love that. But 1999.
Mm.
Why 1999?
The Olympics were part of it, so was the Y2K
I was
bug.
gonna say, yep, yeah.
Or the prospect of, and it was because at that time, I think for a character like Joan, who was on the precipice of changing everything, 1999 was a year in which people were anticipating the coming year, more than we ever anticipated coming year. There was so much talk
There's
about
that fear around it too, wasn't there?
Yeah.
About everything's going to change and we're going to lose all our computers and everything. They're not
Absolutely. There was so much
calendar.
fear and dread. But in Sydney, we were really gearing up for the
too.
Olympics.
Yeah, well, you're excited. Were you excited? Because I've heard a lot of people often not excited about the Olympics coming to their city.
Well, a lot of people were dreading it, and I know people who just left. But those of us
Yeah.
who were here during the Olympics, it was a magical time.
Yeah, I
It
can
really
imagine.
was. It was just the whole city was full of people having fun. It was vibrant. They had big screens up at Circular Quay. We could watch Ian Thorpe winning his gold medal, like all that. It was really good fun. But the whole city changed, and I remember that time of change where just our sense of ourselves had changed. I think that was part of it as well. Our sense of ourselves as Sydney-siders, as Australians, was changing because we got these Olympics and it was this big global thing.
Yeah.
And so that momentum forward into 2000, and I'm not going to say new century because the new century actually started with 2001, because 2000 was the end of the old century and the old millennium. So the year 2000 and whatever that meant to people, there was a lot of momentum. So I thought for Joan running away from her life, that momentum seemed to make sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love it. So that was why, because you've done books from like the 50s, have you? What was Fairvale?
No, Fairvale was 78, and that's the furthest back I've gone.
And that is still technically not historical then, really, is it? Let me think.
Recent historical.
Yeah, because if we're talking about the 50-year thing. But let's also talk, like, do you think, I mean, we've had this discussion before and I've talked about it on TikTok and so have you, I think, that there's advantages to setting a book not in our current times. So is that part of you? And like what I mean, listeners, is things like, we don't have mobile phones. There's no social media. Some of our things, even like DNA testing that's so prevalent these days, is not a thing. Some advances in medical technology, so many things. Is that a factor in you in deciding when to set your book, like rather than have it at a hotel now?
Yeah, I don't want to have to deal with mobile phone communication.
So clever of you.
Because text messages are a really staccato form of communication, and to try to write interaction between characters in that staccato form, I could do it. I don't want to.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very clever idea. And it also gives you back that nostalgia when you're writing a book that's kind of set in your lifetime, but not like now where you're dealing with all the stuff you deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's like everyone looks at the past and that was such a great time, because you forget about the stuff that, unless you've had unless something bad has happened in a specific year or whatever, like I'm just talking in general, you think, things were easier then, things were better, the world was a better place, Yeah,
the nostalgia is a very rosy-hued tinge,
Yeah, no. So how long did it take you to write this book? Do you know? Do you keep records?
I don't, but it's always short. So I think the first draft was about 4 months, but it was.
And let's just remember, everyone, that Sophie works full time as well. So that's not 4 months. Like,
it's not 4 months full time.
Yeah.
So I think 4 months, but this one was different in that I made that decision halfway through that I was not happy with how things were with the number of characters. So this was the one manuscript where I thought, am I going to make it on time? And I did. But it was just part of the churn of it, but it's also deciding that it will be okay. And so I can kind of feel that panic of, I need to do a lot of work here. I need to throw out. I did throw out a lot. And then reshape it around Alison, but also the thing that happened to Joan, and I'll say it because it's in the first chapter, she lost a baby at 4 months, and that was also there because I went so far away from the previous version, and it was niggling me that she didn't feel right. I just kept thinking Joan's not right, and then I realized it's because I had taken her away from what had happened to her in that first version, where it felt really true to me as a character. And I thought she still needs to have lost a child. It's just in this child's going to be younger.
Yeah, so because if she just left her life, I mean, we can all understand, but you can sort of see, anyway, we won't get too deep into that because we don't want spoilers away. But I think that was a very good thing to do.
Well,
and like, I think I probably know the answer, but one final question sort of about this book, unless you've got anything else you want to talk about, is, when you plan the characters so well and you kind of have an idea, obviously their arcs. I mean, you've talked about getting stuck in a way just now because there was a gut feeling and something wasn't right and you realized, but yeah, do you ever like what is your thoughts about writer's block, and do you ever have it with your books?
I've never had it, but I think it's because probably like you were always doing something.
Yeah.
And so I think writer's block is probably more likely to happen if you just have the one project on the go at any given time. Now, for me, the other project that's on the go is Sunburnt Country Music.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if, and I do often have story ideas for other novels, just I won't develop them while I'm writing one.
Yeah.
But
What
I've
do you do?
always
Just
got
write a few notes down?
a few notes, yeah. It's like, and it may not be anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing much of it, but yeah.
It's just like, oh, I'll just jot that down so I don't forget it. And then if I come back to it and it sounds good, if I'm still thinking about it later, then great. Often I never go back to them. But I do think of that as like it's like a clearing out of things. But I'm also with the country music, even though I'm mainly interviewing these days, I am also writing text that goes with those interviews.
Yeah.
So because I've always got those on the go.
Switch to that maybe and just let your
Yeah.
brain center and fix, like, if you're not, yeah.
But I also don't, this is going to sound really tough and maybe some people won't like it, but I sometimes think of writer's block as an indulgence.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
In that it's like it's like indulging insecurity. You can indulge that and it will love it.
Because it is often fear, as we've
Yeah.
spoken about before. Like, I do think there's two types of writer's block, and I do think one is just life. You just don't have the mental capacity to write.
Absolutely. And that's totally valid.
And maybe that's more burnout or just stuff going on. But I think if you're stuck in your book, it's usually like you said, because it's not that you actually blocked with what's going to happen. It's that you've done something. You're trying to push the story another way. You haven't got enough point of views. There's something wrong. And usually you just have to kind of go back and work out where it went wrong, or just think for a bit, do something else, and the solution will find its way. Yeah.
So I think it's usually to do, with fear, as you said, and perhaps the writer's starting to think, oh God, what if someone doesn't think I'm a genius? If I see this,
I'm
what
surprised if anyone does think I'm a genius.
it's like what I've been working on this for so long, what if it doesn't turn out to be anything? And I've said it's an indulgence because I do think that we can indulge those thoughts. I have certainly indulged thoughts like this. Whenever I say something that sounds a bit tough like that, it's because it comes from my own experience. This is also like yoga teacher part of me that in class will tell my students things sounding like I'm being tough on them, but it's always because I've experienced it myself and had to find a way out of it. So I think writer's block, yes, it's real. I don't think it's fake, but I just think you can let it overtake you. Or if you're genuinely interested in getting through it, reframe it. Listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to your energy levels, whatever. If you're feeling blocked, if you literally can't get anything down, heed that and ask yourself why it's happening. As you said, it could be because you're trying to force the story. So treat it as a really good signal. It's like you're starting this up. It's like,
in some ways, it's better to stop, isn't it? It's better to get writer's block than to keep going off on a completely wrong tangent, and then somebody else tells you that later.
But don't indulge it. Like, don't sit there and think, oh, okay, well, I'm blocked. That means I'm terrible.
I'm terrible. Like,
It's more just find something else to do, go for a walk. And the tough part of it is you may need to accept that what you're working on is not working. And that's like when I was running Duchess Hotel, I wasn't blocked, but I was feeling that something wasn't moving. So we've talked in a previous episode about the river of creativity always flowing.
Yeah.
The river was not flowing at the speed I wanted it to. I thought, okay, something's going on here. What is it? And perhaps it comes with experience and me learning to listen to myself. I think it also comes from having a meditation practice where it's like, okay, I'm just going to try to be the witness here and work out what's going on. Because if we think that these stories come from outside, as Elizabeth Gilbert tells us, then we can be the witness. We can step back and say, all right, something's going on here. I'll let you tell me what's going on.
I like that.
And listen, and you may not agree, and because that doesn't mean that necessarily what's coming from outside is what should be complied with, but it's more just try to be the witness to it. And that takes a bit of practice, but we're in it together with our story in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the story is not against you. I'm just checking my notes to see if I've covered everything that I wanted to pick your brain with, and I think we have. I have to ask, you've got some beautiful pink flowers next to your pink roses, are they? Next to your cover. Is that on purpose? Because it goes pink.
Well, my mother gave me those flowers for publication day, and I just thought
lovely.
since, well, they're sitting there anyway.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Well, they
They go perfectly.
Yeah, and then the book I just thought I'd put next to them because matchy.
It's great. Yeah, and I wore pink for it, but
Well, see, I see it as purple, which is interesting. So
I see yours is purple.
yeah, well, my top's purple. No, I think the cover. No, the cover.
Oh, the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lilac, kind of a purpley.
So
I'm
open to interpretations.
Yeah, no, it's definitely purple. It's not bright pink. It's in between purple and pink. Anyway.
But I almost wore a pink top, and then when I saw you, I was like, I'm glad I did not.
We would have looked matchy. Well, thank you so much. That was really enjoyable chat. Always love listening to you talk about writing and your process and stuff. So thank you everyone for listening to us, and make sure you grab a copy of the Art Hour at the Duchess Hotel. Now, Sophie, hang on, I was going to say this is going to go out after you've done your tour, isn't it? Because I was going to say doing events and people can find you. But
there will be later events. I'm going to be Wollongong Library on the 28th of August, Maitland Library, I think that's October 19th, and then the Epping Club in Sydney, November 10th.
So, and they all on your website, are they?
Not yet on the website, but I think on the Ashet website.
Awesome. So if you want to,
I'll put them on social media and stuff.
Yeah, just follow socials and all that sort of stuff. Anything else we need to add about the book or life in general or the podcast?
Just lovely to talk to you, and thank you so much for talking to me about the novel. And now it's out in the world, I feel like I can let it go and get back to the next one.
It's readers. It's for the readers now. Yeah, it's no longer yours.
So you and I will be seeing each other soon to commence recording season 2.
Yes, I can't wait. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and talk to you. We'll be back in a month or so.
See ya.
Bye.